Hey Will, how's it going? Hope everything is going okay. We are watching your bench failure set right now. We're going to go over what keeping it south of the shoulder means, then we're going to touch on your deadlift, and then talk about your squat. Real quick though, we're going to talk about your next workout, which is going to be today. Caught a little audible there. Your squat still looked really easy, so instead of doing a pause squat, we're going to be doing your normal squat today and just piling some more weight on there. So we're going to be doing a 3x5 at 165, and then next workout is going to be at 175. You're not bench pressing today, you are overhead pressing, so remember just to keep those forearms vertical like we talked about in the other videos, and then we're going to do that at 85 pounds. Your deadlift is going to be 3 sets of 5 at 175, and then your tempo chin up, 3 sets of 8 at a 3 count. Now you are only going to be modulating your tempo on the way down. So on the way up, it's totally normal. On the way down, that's when you're going to be slowing yourself down. I'm going to vary that up. I think on this last tempo chin up, I had you slow yourself down on the way up, but we're going to be having that alter kind of back and forth. So this time we're going to slow it down on the eccentric. So the eccentric is the lowering portion of the exercise. So I'll put a little E right here, and that way you know what that means. And if there's a C there, that means concentric, which means slow yourself down on the way up. So again, for this, you're not going to be slowing yourself down on the way up or at the bottom, just on the way down. So a 3 count there, have just count for you, or just count it out for yourself, something like that. So we're going to be talking about your bench bar path. We'll come back to this, and then some moment arms with the shoulder, but we'll just watch the video first. So now it's a little bit hard to tell, but if we have our shoulder joint there, the reason that this is failing is because you're holding it really far south of that for slightly too long. So the first problem here is going to be in your setup in that you're too close to the rack. If you're pressing this in the correct range of motion, your bar will be maybe like an inch, inch and a half away from these pins, which is a little bit too close. So most people get a little bit spooked out by that, so they end up pressing it more low than they think they need to. So we're going to have you scoot the whole operation down, maybe about 2 inches from there, and then we're going to be having you press a little bit closer to your neck, a little bit closer towards your shoulder. And then so we'll speed this guy up. Go back here. Jess did a good job with spotting here. So in the correct liftoff position, she should take an alternating stance, just like she is. So she definitely did a good job. You fixed your grip width and everything like that. You're just holding the bar a little bit south of the shoulder joint, and then we'll explain that in just a second. And then here's the turnarounds, the head shaking, and the curling. Okay, so that was that. And then we'll go over to our diagram. So we have a few moments that we have to play with in the bench press. The most important one is going to be off of the shoulder. So we have, technically one on the wrist and one on the elbow, but the one that we care about right now is the one on the shoulder and the sagittal plane. So if we kind of compare these two bottom positions, so if this guy touches relatively close to his glenohumeral joint, the moment arm in the bottom position is going to be relatively low. This guy who touches farther down is going to have a relatively high moment arm. Now, the initial moment position from your bottom doesn't actually matter as much as you think. So there's plenty of people who touch down here for their first bottom position. What matters is the angle of attack that you're pulling it back at. So if the person who were to touch right here were to throw the bar back at this angle, he would be fine. But if he were to keep it this far away, the moment on the shoulder would just stay very high, because again, it's our perpendicular distance rather than true distance. So in this situation, this little dashed line here is what we need to be thinking about. If you hang the bar out and you press it up straight, you're still trying to overcome that moment on the shoulder the entire time. Instead of really doing a bench press with your pecs and your triceps, you're kind of more doing a front raise with your anterior deltoids, which just makes it really hard. So this is one of those things where it tends to get refined by itself over time, depending on how stubborn the person is. So essentially your hooks were probably about like right here. Forgive the angle, but they were a little bit too close. And then a lot of times what this does, it reinforces a bad position for people, so they end up scooting a little bit farther down, or they end up pressing a little bit farther down than they need to. So we're going to have you scoot your entire body down on the bench, maybe about another 2 inches. On the unrack process, it's very helpful to have a friend to help you lift it off out of the pins. And then in that situation, you can be pressing more vertical. But what you need to be thinking about is pressing back towards the rack. So the angle is going to be about right there. So if you have your spotter, Jess, behind you, she can say something like press towards me, press towards my voice. But essentially what's going to happen is that you're going to basically pop the bar off your chest with your anterior deltoids, The handoff between the pec and the deltoid happens at about here, and then you're going to float the bar back towards your face, okay? So it may not feel like it's going up vertically, but as long as you can translate it horizontally backwards towards yourself, towards over your shoulder joint, then you're in a good position to be. So we're going to go look at some bench bar paths real quick. So this is just to explain just the moment concept for the shoulder, and then now we're going to look at the bar path itself. So this is going to be our descent, and this is going to be our ascent. So we'll just notice what the differences are in between our two lines. So this descent is relatively low, and then this is going to be relatively straight as well. So it's going to be at an angle just because the function of the shoulder, but it's not going to be it's not going to be, you know, let's say some sort of angle like this. On the way up, though, what we'll notice is that it comes off the chest and it's going backwards immediately. Okay, so the most important thing here is that we're going this way. We're going back towards our shoulder. So if we have our shoulder joint right here, so this is that S that I was talking about, so the shoulder. When I'm saying keeping it south of the shoulder, it means that you're holding the bar out farther in this x-axis longer than you need to be. So really the rest of your setup is just perfect, but we just need to change the direction of how you're pressing. So just think about pressing back towards the rack as opposed to straight up. So we're going to go over deadlift now. I'll talk about these positions and I'll show an image. Essentially what's happening is that you've cleared your knees completely out of it. So as opposed to having a shin angle that's going to be involved, your shin angle is even more drastic than this one. It's almost perfectly vertical. So the check that I want you to make during your deadlifts today, I want your knees to be flush with the inside of your elbows. So this lady is actually a little bit past, but if I were to put like a line right here, all of these points should be flush. So your forearm and your knee should be flush with each other. So we'll notice how her knees are firmly inside of her forearms, and then we'll compare this to some of your starting positions on your deadlift. We'll go to Ditto 1. Nice modeling and curling. Okay, so we'll look at this descent right here. So you attempt to break it off the floor without the use of your knees. So what's going to happen, and I'll slow this down, you'll look at your shoulder. So your shoulder is going to make a motion where it almost looks like it's popping back towards your hips. That's going to be you tightening your lats before the pull. So there's that. You're trying to set your back, but your back is still pretty curved. But what we'll notice here is that your shins are perfectly vertical. I need your knees involved in the movement. So you're still setting up a little bit too close to the bar. Set up farther away from the bar. Let your knees travel more forward so you can actually get them involved. And if we look at this position here, the bar is off the floor right now. Your knees and your shoulders aren't even touching. So the check that I want you to run today is to have your knees inside of your shoulders. So I'll go back to our reference image here. Attempt to mimic this. This is the goal here. Okay, so she's pulling 185. I think you'll be pulling around that too. But again, knees inside of your shoulders. Okay, so if you're videotaping them in real time, watch your warm-up sets, you know, like watch 135 and then see where your knees are. If your knees aren't inside of your elbows, solve the problem. You're a smart guy, I'm sure you can figure that guy out. And then we'll go over your squat. So your squat is looking really good. You seem to be a natural squatter, which is pretty solid. What we need to work on though is finding your bounce. So you're still kind of pausing through the bottom position. And then now one other thing I would like to mention is that these hooks, so the hooks that the bar is sitting on, those ideally you should lower those. Those should be about mid-sternum. So if you walk up and just place your sternum onto this vertical upright, find a hook that is basically right in the middle there. You shouldn't be doing like a full squat to get it out of the rack, but you should be doing kind of a quarter squat to pick the bar up. This is still a little bit high for you, so getting into your rack position tightly is going to be a little bit challenging. So we're going to slow this guy down. So you're doing a good job with setting your hips back. And the one thing that I would like is for your toes to be pointed out more drastically. And then the way that I can see that is that, so I'm going to put this line here and then we're going to play through this. But your knee is tracking outside of your foot. So if here's your foot, your knee is tracking outside of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our toe out to the left and our right toe out to the right. And then we're going to shove our knees out a little bit farther too. So you should be feeling a bounce at your bottom position in your hamstrings and then in your crotch. And then if you're not feeling that, kind of just widen up your stance. But your bottom position is perfect. That little up-down that you do right there, that's an attempt to find the bounce. So we'll play through this slowly. So one more time. Right here, you're going to do a little up, down. You're going to pause and then go up, down, bounce out of it. So that bounce, catch that on the first try. You don't have to find that twice. If you find it once, you find it. So think about squatting a little bit faster, giving it some gas. Your rack position's really good. The torso angle's good. Just shove your knees out a little bit more, shove your toes out more. Other than that, everything should be fine. We kept this to around 10 minutes. But the cliff notes here, get your knees inside your elbows. Make sure you're pressing back towards the rack. And then since you're going to be overhead pressing today, try and make sure that your forearms are vertical through the bottom. And then remember, don't move your head so much. So if you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.